Okay, peeps, welcome back. So today we're going to be going over the Bitcoin miners and how the miners do appear to be beginning to pop off on bullish CPI data. So with that being said, let's get it. All right, so as you guys know, we covered CPI data in the previous video. So CPI day was today, as I'm sure you guys know. This is what the turnout was for the CPI data. As you guys can see here, CPI came down. I'm actually going to go over the events calendar with you guys here on TradingView to show you kind of what the expectations were. So the big ones that really matter here is core inflation year over year. I mean, yes, month over month does matter, but in my opinion, year over year is a better gauge because that gauges a 12-month time frame versus a 1-month time frame. A lot can change in 12 months. So again, the prior read was 3.8%. The forecast for this read was 3.6%. That is on the core inflation year over year, and then the headline inflation year over year was the prior was 3.5%. The forecast was 3.5%, and then the forecast was 3.4%. So as you guys can see, the CPI data did come in at expectations. The markets were still very bullish. I think they could have been even more bullish if we had come in at, say, a core CPI of 3.4 and a headline CPI of 3.3, but that didn't happen. Regardless, markets were bullish on that, and as a result, in combination probably with some of the earnings from the miners, that is probably a vast majority of the reason why the miners went up. And not only that, but not only did the miners go up, but also the cryptocurrencies themselves went up. You can see Bitcoin up 7%, Ether up 4.6%, and then you have like even some of the meme coins up. So Dogecoin's up. You have Shiba Inu up 10%, so SHIB's popping off again. That's not really surprising. Your AI plays like the Graph, let's see here, Render, and Fetch.ai, and AIOZ, which is all the way up here at the top, and this new one we're looking at, Aleph. So those have all popped up massively, and even the Grayscale Trusts have also popped off, as you guys can see. So let's get into the miners here. So we're still kind of in this massive rising channel. Again, this typically would be a bearish pattern, but because it's so, I would be looking for more of a narrow pattern. This one's kind of really huge. I guess technically if I wanted to draw it like this would actually kind of be a rising broadening wedge or even a microphone pattern. Although microphone pattern generally goes sideways, but if this was a microphone pattern, that would be bullish. If it's a rising broadening wedge, that's bearish. But regardless, the price is creating higher highs and higher lows, as you guys can see here, which is a bullish trend. And as of right now, the support is still between roughly about $12.30 to just under $14. Resistance is 21 to 23.70, and the swing high up here is $25. I don't think $25 is going to be the swing high for CLSK and the rest of these miners. Reason I say that is because, again, we're kind of in the consolidation post-halving phase, or what's supposed to be post-halving for Bitcoin consolidation phase, where we kind of just have a pullback and or chop around, mostly little up, a little down, but mostly sideways until roughly about the end of the year. That's what's supposed to happen. So in short, what I'm saying here is I don't think that Bitcoin has had its full parabolic move yet. I think Bitcoin could potentially go anywhere from, I'm just going to pick a random number here, say probably somewhere between 150 to 250,000. And again, I do think that's possible. And the Pi cycle top indicator, which we look at on the Bitcoin videos, do also support that theory because, again, once we break out of that green line, which is at 80K, generally Bitcoin goes up and then it tops out once the two lines cross over each other, which, again, we are very far away from. When that happens, when Bitcoin goes to all-time highs, I suspect these miners are really going to start ripping up, and we're going to see what they're truly capable of at that time, which, again, is roughly around at the end of the year, which by that time we'll have the presidential elections. Based on the way CPI looks right now, the Fed could potentially start cutting rates or even before then. And likely the stock market and the crypto market is going to continue to go up, not down. I say this in spite of the yield curve uninversion, which is generally bearish for the markets. That's what happens when the Fed cuts rates. The yield curve uninverts, the markets drop. It's usually what history supports. However, we are in an election year. So from the bullish perspective, it looks kind of bad for any presidential candidate if the markets are falling off a cliff around the time of the election. Okay. Even more so, in my opinion, it looks bad for Biden because if and again, I know a lot of people don't want to talk about politics, but we're going to do it because it matters. It's important. It does affect markets. But it looks especially bad for Biden because Biden is currently president, which again, Biden has zero chance of winning, in my opinion. I am 100% on the Trump train, voting for Trump this year. No questions asked, end of story. But it looks bad for Biden because he is the current presiding president. If the markets fall off a cliff before the end of the elections, okay? Which is another reason why I think Trump is going to get elected this year. But regardless, no candidate wants to see the markets drop, and that does not look favorable for a future president. So all those things considered, I think that's all going to line up in tandem with each other at the end of the year. Bitcoin is going to rip to new all-time highs. We're going to see the miners rip to new all-time highs. That's what I'm saying. So as of right now, from the current price, just to get back to the highs, as you guys can see, is about a 48% move to go from, let's say, the bottom of this kind of trend line here to get to back to the top of the trend line, about an 87% move. So even though CleanSpark is a bigger miner, this thing does have a massive potential upside here, as you guys can see. So Mara had a pretty bullish day. You can see this big fat green candle on the weekly. And on the daily, we actually did get back above these EMAs again. We kind of had a pump fake here and then got back above. So I'm not sure what it's doing, but as you guys can see, Mara had earnings. It was kind of a mixed bag. Whereas CleanSpark had double bullish earnings. The other reason why I think that the miners will probably likely pump to new all-time highs towards the end of the year is because as the price of Bitcoin is going up, the price of the Bitcoin miners' holdings are going to go up too, which increases the value of the stock in the company. You guys have to understand that all of these miners hold some amount of Bitcoin, okay? And when that Bitcoin goes up in value, that's automatically going to increase the price of the stock, which increases the price of the company, okay? And not only that, but the options are also going to be paying more in premiums too when the prices get higher as well. So that's also something else to consider. So Mara, as of right now, this does have to be confirmed, but it does potentially look like this thing has turned back into support. So we kind of have this green candle close here, as you guys can see, just slightly above the zone here. Again, we got 2 more days to confirm this, but if it confirms, this would be support. So that'd be roughly about $18 to $20. We do have a call on Mara currently at $19. It does look like it's going to get called away in the profit. This would be the first time ever for us in options that something that actually gets called away in profit. Shock. So $29 to $33 on resistance. The swing high up here is $34, as you guys can see. So again, it is a massive move. We do kind of have this really strange looking microphone and or broadening wedge pattern here. So this will serve as support and resistance along with these zones. But just to go from the current price to the swing high up here is about a 70% move. And if you think it's going to pull back, I mean, you could throw on a cash secured put or simply wait for the shares to drop and buy it directly off the market. And then ride the wave up to the swing high up here, which is about an 88% move. Again, that's up to you if you want to do that or not. So RIOT, this one again has really just been sitting here at this support. I'm going to go ahead and guess that all these times that it was sitting at support here was accumulation, because each one of these times we were roughly about this price level that we're currently at. We had a massive rip up to this resistance, okay? So here we had a dump, but of course that makes sense because it was a bear market. And then we turned it into support. So we kind of accumulated here, boom, ripped up, accumulated here, boom, ripped up, again, ripped up. And I suspect something similar is going to happen this time too. So RIOT, you guys can see they recently had earnings, again, a mixed earnings, but I do suspect that it depends on where the earning dates fall, but I do suspect that pretty much all of these miners are going to be massively in profit, especially towards the end of the year once Bitcoin gets to the new all-time highs. Because as I said, again, it doesn't necessarily matter the size of their company. It matters more so the amount of Bitcoin that they have and the average price of it. So obviously, the less Bitcoin they have, the less profit. But if they still make profit, that's good. The more Bitcoin they have, the more profit, right? Because again, it's all based on the price of Bitcoin. So going back over here to the weekly, I mean, this thing is pretty much as good as a buy as it's going to get, in my opinion. We haven't really seen a breakdown below this $9-ish level for months on end now. It did come down to the bottom of the support here, but it was a kind of a pump fake. This was a hammer candle, so pretty much it was a bear trap, and then the price went higher, and we've been kind of sitting on that level ever since. So I don't think it's going to go lower than this level, in my opinion. But again, the support is roughly about $7.50 to $10. Resistance is $18.60 to roughly about $21. So you're looking at potentially at least a 2x on your money, if not more. So just from the current price to the swing high is about 98%. And from, let's just say, the bottom of these candles here, because I don't think it's going to go lower than that, at least not anytime soon, to the swing high is about 143% move. So HUT 8, if I'm not mistaken, I think HUT 8 just had earnings. I'll have to look more into this and follow up with you guys on a following video on this, because I've noticed that the TradingView earnings tabs don't necessarily line up with the miners. I could be mistaken on this, but I did see kind of a discrepancy about a week ago on something. I forget exactly what it was, but there was something where the earnings date did not line up with what TradingView was showing. So again, yeah, I do apologize about that, but of course I don't know about these things until I become aware of them. So as of right now, we're still in this falling wedge pattern. As you guys can see here, this is a very bullish pattern. Okay, at some point, this thing is going to reach an apex and it's going to break out to the upside, which, again, we have double support here. So we have the wedge and we also have support. So I would say there's an extremely high probability of a breakout up. Again, this is a generally bullish pattern. Target's going to be the top of the wedge, which is that swing high up there at 23. So as of right now, support is roughly about $4 to $8.90, and then $7.75 to about 22.5 on the resistance. Just to go from the current price to the swing high is about 152%, and from the bottom of the support to the swing high is about 471%. And I would say likely it's not going to go below this level here. So this $6.50 level, which you guys can see, is also kind of a bounce point back here before we had this massive run up. That's a very important level. I would say likely it's not going to break below that. So if you guys wanted to pick that as potentially your bottom zone, that's up to you. That's kind of what I'm seeing here. But from that point to the swing high is 262%. So pretty big move. And again, the smaller the market cap on these miners, the larger the potential move. Okay, because again, when the market cap is smaller, it requires less capital to move a greater distance versus something like a Microsoft is probably not going to do a 5x in a very short time frame. Okay, you guys see my point. Like, this thing is only a few billion versus Microsoft's 1 trillion. It's much harder to move 1 trillion than it is a few billion. So I have these lined up pretty much in terms of market caps here on TradingView. So Mara being the largest, all the way down to the smallest, which I think is either BT or BITF. I'm not sure which one, but you kind of get the idea here. So support is $2.20 to $2.70 on CIFR, and then $4.90 to $5.50 on the resistance, and then 5 3/4 at the swing high up there. So from, I'll say roughly where I think the bottom is going to be here, probably no lower than roughly about 2 1/4 to the swing high, you'd be looking at as much as 155% move. And again, this is kind of stuck in no man's land, which is why we don't have this one, because it's neither bullish nor bearish, in my opinion. It's just kind of stuck there in between. Usually when something looks like this, we try to tend not to touch it until we get a more confirmed move or a better setup. So again, earnings as of recently was kind of mixed. So BTBT, it does appear that these earnings are on. They just had their earnings. This is extremely bullish. I mean, holy crap, look at this. They beat on a surprise on earnings revenue, or earnings, I guess, by 3,340%. So yeah, we have 1,400 shares of this. I'm thinking this thing's probably going to rip pretty soon. Again, that's not financial advice, but if it does, Well, I mean, it's a good thing we've been buying. So, as of right now, I would say that likely this is going to be the support zone. So 160 to about $2, 420 to about 480 on the resistance zone there, and then 530 on the swing high. Again, we need to see it get above the EMAs. It's not above the EMAs yet, but basically pretty much from the wick low to the wick high up here, as you guys can see, 203% move. And again, I'll reiterate, the BTBT is, if I'm not mistaken, is a smaller market cap than HUD8, which again explains why the move here could potentially be bigger. Okay, penny stocks are going to move a lot more than something like a dividend stock or a tech stock that has a multi-hundred billion or trillion-dollar market cap. So keep that in mind. All right, so BITF, it does look like it wants to actually bounce even before getting to this trend line. I did tell you guys that I thought the trend line was probably going to be the support, so roughly about $1.35, $1.40. As of right now, the resistance is $2 to $2.33, and then above that, you have roughly about $3 to $3.60, and just under $4 on the swing high up there. So from the current level to the swing high, you'd be looking at 111%. From the current level to the potential bounce area, about 25% drop. And then from the trend line to the first swing high, 66%, to the second swing high, 156%, and to the local top here, roughly about 182%. So in terms of what these things could do to the upside, kind of want to show you guys the potential here for what this could possibly do. So just going from the previous market top here to the swing low, as you guys can see on the Fibonacci's, this thing could go potentially as high as $70 to all the way up to $175. Again, this 3.618 lines up perfectly with this previous wick high up, as you guys can see up here over in September 2018. Do I think it's going to get that high? It's honestly hard to say. I potentially could see the price of the miners going even higher than any of these prices here, at the very least, if, like, say for example, I believe Wisconsin just added the spot Bitcoin ETFs to their state balance sheet, if I'm not mistaken. But if we start to see a lot bigger, more mass adoption like that, like the banks are buying, the states are buying, countries are buying, you have governments buying, if it gets like that, and demand really goes up for these miners, and of course they can only produce so much Bitcoin, so limited supply, increased demand. Yes, I do think that CleanSpark could potentially go way, way higher. Whether it goes back up to these highs here or not, honestly, I don't know. That remains to be seen. So let me actually go back here. So I missed one. So let's go to Mara. So we'll go from basically the fib high to the fib low here. Kind of a rough estimate, as you guys can see. I mean, the move to the move on this thing could be absolutely insane. So 132 all the way up to $340. I would say let's just start with trying to get to that first fib level. So 132. Do I think that's possible? Yes, I do. Again, once I said, like what I said before, once the right circumstances are in place, there's increased demand and limited supply for the amount of Bitcoin that the miners can print. I think that would be extremely bullish for the price of these miners. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. So again, RIOT is $80. The current price is $10. So that gives us roughly about an 8x. I don't really need to do the fibs right now because, again, the price just on the charts, as you guys can see, would be huge enough. HUD8, you can see why we're so heavy in this one. The high up here is roughly about a 10x. CIFR, $15, current price $4, so maybe potentially a 4x if I wanted to go ahead and dig into this. Just to kind of get an idea of what it would look like. Again, these are assuming that it breaks the previous all-time high. It'd be anywhere between $24.5 to $63 of potential upside, which again is massive. I mean, to get up to 60 is like a what is that, a 15x on CIFR? And again, some of these native cryptos and even the Grayscale Trust will probably do way more than that. So would it shock me if that happened on CIFR? Not really. So BTBT, this one is, in my opinion, probably going to be the best one this cycle. Maybe this one at HUD 8, because again, as you guys can see here, the previous all-time high is literally like almost a 12x from the current price. Just absolutely insane moves. If it goes even higher than that, which based on the tiny market cap this thing has, it's possible. The move could be anywhere from $54 to $138. I don't know about $138, but maybe like $50, $60. I would say that's definitely possible. Again, that is only roughly about a 2x the previous all-time high. But if we're in quantitative easing when these things start ripping, meaning the Fed's already cutting rates and then the markets are also ripping simultaneously, then yeah, I would say it definitely becomes a possibility at that point. So BITF, this thing does appear to not be quite as bullish, but again, you'd still be looking at nearly a 5x just to get to the highs on this. And again, a lot of these miners do provide some pretty good options premiums for sellers, so that's something to keep in mind. So you'd have roughly about a $16 to $41 price here on BITF, so huge potential moves, as much as potentially a 20x on this one. So I wanted to go over BTBT and a couple of these miners just to kind of show you guys the difference in market cap, and again, increased demand and the increased value of Bitcoin with the limited supply of Bitcoin and the limited amount of Bitcoin that the miners can mine, because again, every time a halving happens, the potential supply of Bitcoin to come onto the market every block is cut in half. Okay, so those things alone could increase the price valuations of these companies and these market caps, which is one of the reasons, in my opinion, one of the underlying reasons why you're seeing MicroStrategy go absolutely insane in terms of price. Okay, that could potentially be a leading indicator. MicroStrategy could be a leading indicator as to what we're going to see these miners do. So quick note here, BTBT only a 280 million market cap. If we compare that to something like Mara, let's say, for example, 5.5 billion. So again, this thing, BTBT would have to do about a 20x in market cap just to get to the size of Mara. If and when that happens, in my opinion, it's a matter of when, not if. Mara could be 5x or 10x the current size that it is right now. So we could see a 50 or a 25 to a $50 billion Marathon Digital holdings, which again would make the price of the stock much more valuable. It'd probably be closer to $100. I'm not promising this. Again, nothing's a guarantee in trading and investing, but do understand that this is a possibility. Okay, it could happen. I mean, things seem to be lining up perfectly for this to take place. So 800 million on HUD 8. Again, just to get to Mara's market cap, you'd be looking at roughly about a 5.5x, which again would put HUD 8 at roughly about $40. So a little bit higher than where Mara and CleanSpark are at. If I take a look at something like CIFR, you guys can see it's still relatively small. So about 4 times smaller than Mara. And BITF, which was a request that we did. So this one is also quite small, not as small as BTBT, but again, it's roughly going to be about, I'd say roughly about a 6x to get to the size of Mara. So that would put this one at roughly about a $12 per share price point, which is pretty much on par with RIOT. So if I go over RIOT, you guys can see RIOT's a little bigger. So 3 billion, and then CLSK, 3.9 billion. You can kind of see the target estimates down here too. So 25 for CleanSpark. If I actually go back here, you can see RIOT's price target is $18. Bitfarms, $4.38. So these are all bullish targets. Okay, so basically these analysts, they think that the price of all of these will go up as well. So CIFR Mining is higher than the current price. HUD 8, again, higher than the current price, although it's not that much higher. I think that's kind of an underestimation. Same thing with Mara. Same thing with BTBT, more than double their current price. Now, in terms of, so we have a lot of different options here, basically collecting premiums, but in terms of our holdings, for those of you guys that have not seen our channel yet, it's kind of what it looks like. So we have Coney, which again is basically a Coinbase dividend ETF, so that's kind of a crypto play. But in terms of our miners, we have 336 shares of HUD 8, 1400 BTBT. As you guys can see here, we are currently pretty much at break even. So we could start seeing some massive profits starting tomorrow on that. 200 shares of RIOT, which is actually in profit now. Mara's in profit. So it's 100 shares. CLSK is moving back up, 300 shares. And then we also have some, where is it? Let me see if I can find it. MSTY, which is based on MicroStrategy. Again, this is a monthly dividend paying ETF. So anyways, hope you all enjoyed this content. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see y'all later. Peace.